And that was when I actually walked away from the trading. And a lesson, the biggest lesson for me that learned at that point was the amount of energy it freed up to allow me to see clearly.
Yeah.
I'd spent too long, for some reason, there was a belief in there that this was the only way.
Yeah.
And it had to take a nudge from the universe to just say, hey,
yeah,
wake up here. You've got, like, there was so many, I don't know if any of you tried stock trading on the day trade markets, but it's brutal. And there was definitely a self-development that required a detachment that it was teaching me, but I just didn't master it. I didn't have a big enough bank account, basically. But anyway, so that was my melting point and crumbled from there. But then a mate of mine actually gave me the book, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you read that.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, it was a long time. It was all about that. And all of a sudden I started to open up into the figuring out a way of looking at things differently. It was a great book. It was actually a great self-development book. But instantly, when I let go of the trading, it opened me up into seeing the disgust of the supplement industry and the protein powders and the things that they put in them. And I always remember saying, well, we can't give that to a cancer person. Like, it's certainly not going to support them.
Yeah.
And long story short, through different connections, there was a development of a natural protein powder. And this is wild to think how common this is now, but at the time nobody was doing it. And I thought, why can't I be starting to sell that? So I actually made negotiations, and I still had no money at this point, but made negotiations within the university, and they supported me to see if I could sell it within their facilities. And the next thing I know, over about a 6-month period, I got all the staff on it, the students were using it, the people at the gym, and it was moving, and people were loving it.
Cool.
And then I partnered with someone, and we formed a company called 180 Nutrition. Still flying blind, but really starting to listen to my heart, because I was so pissed off at the food industry. It felt like I was adding real value to somebody's life, and it was what it represented was everything. And that's where my passions were really coming alive. And after 3.5 years, mate, it became pretty much a multi-million-dollar company, and it kind of took off, which was amazing, because all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I had this contrast of no money to having money, and I could go out and buy a Ducati, because I used to visualize going down the road on my push bike as fast as I could.
She couldn't catch you to run you over in the Ducati.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up buying a Duke and everything. But at the same time, that feeling that was with me in my teens and my 20s and everything, it was still there.
Yeah.
Like when I was honest with myself, I'd sit that night and like it's not happy. So I went and decided to do a shamanic journey with ayahuasca. And this was going back about 11 years ago now. Again, leaning into a story why this is relevant, I had a really traumatic time on mushrooms when I was about 13 years old. I was with older kids. I didn't know what I was doing. I took these mushrooms and it freaked me out. And as a 13-year-old kid, I hid in an abandoned house in a cellar for about 5 hours, curled up in a ball, just waiting for this thing to wear off. And I was hallucinating and seeing things. And it actually, I'd never touched a drug again after that. I was like, I am out. That is just wrong.
Yeah.
And so I'd lived with that trauma the whole time, and ayahuasca kept coming up in my peripheral. And by this time I was meditating and things and starting to piece pieces together. And I realized every time I thought about doing the shamanic journey, it terrified me because of the trauma from my childhood.
Sure.
And it was, again, my first lesson in really starting to learn that my body is stuck in the past, even though I'm in the present. Right. And those traumas coming through, and actually having to go through this initiation or stepping into the unknown, into a fear that felt very visceral for me, was huge. But I decided to go and do it anyway, because my life, I just wasn't happy. So I spent a month following all the protocols, stripping all the things out of my diet, and actually getting things like decluttering my life, which was huge in itself. That's when the transformation started to occur. Yeah. But I treated it with the utmost sacred way I could, and respect with that. And I went, and I'll never forget, Brandon, when I went to go and drink this ayahuasca, I had a couple of mates with me. They were dear friends I used to live with. And I thought I was going to die. My whole body was convulsing. It was in that much fear.
Wow.
And I remember drinking it, thinking, well, fuck, I'm in. What have I done? Yeah. And I laid down, and I always remember there was a couple of beautiful, the people that ran this thing were beautiful. And again, that was the first time a complete stranger showed me so much compassion and just care for somebody he never knew. And again, that was really special. These moments always stand out to me now when I facilitate and move forward. And he just said, you got an opportunity to surrender here. And I remember laying there, opening my palms, softening my body, going and making a deal with the divine, ayahuasca, or whatever it is, to say, okay, I am all in. I am all in. I am 100% surrendering. I am not going to resist anything. And if I die tonight, so be it, but I am all in. That's how the level of where I got to, because my life was so miserable, really, even though from the outside it was perceived really well. And I just let go, mate. And in that letting go was, to this day, still sits with me, was such a huge lesson on what surrender actually means.
Yeah.
Not from a mental, but from an actionable, visceral feeling. Yeah. And I had this experience where I got taken around the universe. It was unbelievable. I had this most profound experience where I just completely opened up, and I evaporated. And it's really hard. I don't know if you've done plant-based medicine, mate, but it's really hard to describe when you start to have these experiences. And it was very personable. But I come out of that going, oh my God, there is so much more to this reality. And I had this real feeling of, this is a direction I need to take somehow. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how it's going to be. Yeah. But there's more. But then what it did, as I integrated that over the months coming, it was like, well, I took plant medicine and I had that experience. Is that really who we are? Or was that just the plants talking? You know, you get back into 3D reality, you get back into all these things.
Start questioning, hold on.
Yeah, exactly. But because I gave it space and I only did one journey, and I just think where I was as an individual, it really landed for me. So I was ferociously just starting to meditate, and I was starting to look at more books and esoteric things. I was podcasting by this point. It was funny because I had a podcast with my supplement company, but I was getting like Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden. This is going back like 10, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. All these guys that had nothing to do with bloody protein supplements or the nutritional industry. And I can see I'm going way off in the wrong direction here. Like someone's going to have to give soon. And I think about then a couple of years later, I ended up having a full spontaneous awakening, because through the work I was doing. And what happened was basically energy shot out of the base of my spine from my first center. It's a kundalini. I later learned it was a kundalini awakening, but for anyone listening that's unsure, they say that the soul comes into the body when we're about 49 days in the womb, and then we use all this energy for growth. And as we start to grow from a young child, that energy then starts to lay dormant, and it coils at the base of the spine like a snake. And it's a feminine energy, and we can use it to arouse that energy back up, and it's very cleansing. So if you start to think about if information is being held within the energetic field, that trauma, like where is it? Is it in my body? Is it my cells? Is it my muscles? Or is it like if you go quantum in the field itself of information? When just from my mushroom experience and all the other traumas that we all experience, right?
Yeah.
So then this energy shot through me, and it actually threw me off my chair, and I convulsed, and literally the energy, the convulsion is literally the nervous system not being able to adapt to the amount of energy that wants to come through, and it opened my third eye instantly. And I had to, but from my experience of understanding and trusting and surrendering into the plant medicine, it gave me the opportunity to surrender again, because it brought up a lot of fear, all the things it was buttoned up against, all my unconditional beliefs, resistance and fears and things like that. And of course, what resists persists. And I see it when we facilitate all the time. People start resisting into that and are not fully letting go to allow it to move, because there's a great saying, what's coming is going.